Yeah, there's a saying that says that we preach what we know, but we act like who we are.
There you go.
Yeah.
This is not why we invited you on this podcast.
Actually,
to shame us,
that's such a
but
good
it's true.
definition.
Yeah.
Such
Oh,
a good
So
definition.
you are who you are because what you've believed over time, depending on the kind of information that was given to you since childhood, that you are.
Hi guys, Murugi Munyi here.
It's Lydia KM,
And we're back again with another episode of
the messy in between.
It's
Definitely
TMI.
Ooh, well done.
Thank you.
Did it.
Fantastic.
Spot on.
Hi guys, welcome to this episode of TMI, which is a very, very special one. Not just because we have a guest, but also because the conversation we are going to be having is one that Lydia is going to feel very challenged about, just
Lydia.
because of her internalized struggles with being able to like diversify our definitions of masculinity. But anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. If this is your first time watching TMI, which I'm certain this is not your first time watching TMI, but if it is, please make sure you subscribe, like this video if you like content like this. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, TMI Podcast KE, Murugi Munyi, Lydia KM, and of course our guest, who a bit of background about him and the reason why we have him over here before I let him introduce himself. On his bio on Instagram, he says that he works to challenge negative, dominant, harmful narratives
stereotypes.
around heteromasculinity, right? Please introduce yourself and tell us more about what that means.
Well, what that means is I just disturb men's minds, really. I like challenging our notions of what we think masculinity is, to imagine an expansion of who a man can be beyond what a man has been told to be, especially straight men. Outside that, I'm a writer, I'm a poet, I am a trauma coach, I teach storytelling as well. I use stories for to help people heal, to connect people with themselves, and also for advocacy work, especially around sexual and reproductive health and rights.
Fantastic. And so your name is, in case somebody...
Onyango Otieno or Rix?
Or Rix.
Yes.
Rix
Yeah.
Poet, if you
Rix Poet is
haven't...
my stage name, yeah.
You can see it's written here on the screen.
By production,
has put
boom,
here
with
Rix
all the edits.
Poet, yes. So I was introduced to your page by Lydia. I can't remember what episode it was that we were shooting here. And I remember at the end of the episode, you were just like, but there's this guy who I follow on Instagram. And oh my gosh, I'm sure you've seen him. And I hadn't seen your page or whatever. And then you were just like, no, guys, you need to be following this guy. And when I went to your page, the first thing that I saw was pads. And I was like, am I on the right page? I was like, what am I looking at? And then I just scrolled through and I was like, I see why she said I need to be following this person. And I have not left since.
Yeah.
I've not left your page since.
We met. We were speaking at a school mental health assembly. I actually know you more from that perspective of mental health. And you meet someone and you're just like, you're thought provoking in a way that feels like I'm growing. I can literally feel myself sprouting as you're talking.
in which can be a bit uncomfortable.
It is. There's discomfort.
Yeah, for
there
sure,
is. There
for
is.
sure, yeah.
And then we did a live on men's mental health together, and I saw the response of that because there's just not enough men having these kind of conversations, and maybe even if they are, it's not so raw, it's not so uninterrupted, it's not so thought provoking. And I think there's a space that you hold that I can't. If I was told to define who else is even close to the space that you're occupying, I don't see anyone else. And I think what you're doing is amazing. And not only about you disturbing men, you are disturbing women.
Yeah,
we are here to tell
Def,
you
are also disturbing us.
Yeah, because I didn't actually realize it, but the definition of masculinity feels like it's something I'm part of too. So when I see it challenged as well, it challenges my stuff, it challenges my definitions, what I expect men to be. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, guys. This is actually Joe who decided to do that, because Joe, as you know, has no negative views on what
Oh,
toxic
yeah,
you
no.
know
You know I have a
she is
son. You all
of
know I
course,
have a son.
of course.
Yeah,
So you know
so
how
you
she's
bet,
she's broadened
That's
her
it.
definition of masculinity. So today we're going to be talking about detoxifying masculinity. And people are always talking about toxic masculinity. That's fine. We know,
Yeah.
we kind of have a picture of exactly what that is. But number one, how does it come about? What are the views and thoughts that we have that actually contribute to men feeling like they need to uphold this toxic definition of masculinity? So we're going to be getting called out today, by the way.
certainly.
We also did ask you on Instagram. So if you're following us on Instagram, you know. We asked you on Instagram, what is a masculine man to you? And we got some responses, and later on, maybe Rix, you'll be telling us, are we the drama, or is that
Or are
us
men the
perpetuating toxic masculinity? So maybe we can start with the definition of masculinity. It's defined as the characteristics that are traditionally thought to be typical of or suitable for men. Another definition is that masculinity involves displaying attitudes and behaviors that signify and validate maleness, and involves being recognized in particular ways by other men and women. How would you define masculinity?
That's a very hard question,
Yeah.
because anytime we try to define this thing, it limits a lot of people
Right.
who are here. They exist, you know, because I am a spirit that is in form of a man.
Okay.
Okay. I may look masculine to you, and not very masculine to you, and not very masculine at all to somebody else.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm usually very confused about these definitions because they are very limiting to me. I think I'm still looking for the language to say, so what is masculinity really? You know, for example, I was born, I found myself on this earth. It so happened that I have a penis, right?
Thank you.
And I apparently am supposed to grow these muscles, and then some beard came as well. So my world is telling me, okay, you're a man. Yeah. But then inside me, I have very many complex emotions, very many complex thoughts, right? The way I think of sex, the way I think of marriage or relationships, the way I think of my body, it's different from another man and another woman and another this and another that. So perhaps in our world, we like to define things so that we try to box them. But in reality, it's very difficult, and I feel even unfair to try to really define what a human being is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in some ways, I like what you said about like as humans, why we try to define things. I think it's just because when things are just left open, it's too much. Like
It's
It's
uncomfortable.
just so uncomfortable. It's like, no, let's just all agree that this is what a man is, and this is what he looks like. This is how much he earns.
Yeah.
This is how big his muscles are. And so if you don't fall in that category, therefore we cannot consider you a man enough, kind of thing. I
Yeah.
feel like it can be really uncomfortable to think of things as like, oh, it's open. You can be however you want.
Yeah.
Can you?
Yeah, let me tell you, I feel like women, we fight for that right so much. I think I was telling Joe just before we came on, I feel like women, we have fought for our right to define what it is. A woman can be a boss babe and then a mom, and you know, we've really stretched that definition. We've fought for that, but we are still actually part of the people who need masculinity to just be defined. Like,
Yeah.
just make that clear for us, so that I decide, you know, like now I'm single and dating. So if I'm dating, is like, okay, so if I've been told this is what masculine is and this is what I'm going for, everything else out, it makes things easier when we box people. It's not great. I don't think we support it, especially here on
just makes
TMI.
things easier, yeah.
It just makes things easier. But is there a picture that you have in your mind as far as what masculinity is, or you don't even want to go there?
I don't have a picture.
I
There
love
is
that.
no picture, because even from what you've said, and I understand that's how many of us have been taught to think of it. Like when it's boxed for you, then you make the decisions.
Yeah.
But then when you really go deeper with that, is decisions are being made for you. You're not going with what you're feeling.
It's
It's
true.
what you
towards
are
I've been
someone.
told.
Yeah.
What you've been-
Oh,
what you
it's like
perceive,
this,
yeah.
then I'm gonna fit into this box as well. Then I love this person.
Yeah.
It's manufactured love.
Yeah.
All of it is manufactured.
So let
My
me tell you,
God.
I feel like I'm somewhere where I've challenged a lot of my thoughts, but I can still see how my conditioning like I can still see my conditioning like being part of my decision making. So I actually sometimes inside I feel bad. I feel bad for being part of like, you know, men feeling bad about like not having the same freedom to decide what masculinity looks like. But then at the same time, I see myself being really who I've been conditioned to be without even thinking about it.
And there's no way, I don't know if there's a way to like reverse that, because I feel like even as a woke, very like I can see there's all these different genders and people who are now like, it's not just men and women, it's like vulva owners and penis owners and all this. It's like I'm very broad-minded, but at the same time it's just so hard to let go of those things that we were raised to believe. Like I mean, it's just like just the stereotypes, the ones that people were saying on Instagram. It's just kind of like, I know, but do I know? You know, it's just like...
Yeah, there's a saying that says that we preach what we know, but we act like who we are.
There you go.
Yeah.
This is not why we invited you to this podcast.
Actually,
to shame
that's
us,
such a
but
good
it's true.
definition.
Yeah.
Such a good
So
definition.
you are who you are because what you've believed over time, depending on the kind of information that was given to you since childhood, that you are. You know, so for example, you're born and then, oh, he has a penis, so this is your script. You're a dude, this is your script. From the moment you're born, all right? You're supposed to be a provider, you're the priest of the home, you are supposed to work hard, you're supposed to protect your family, you're supposed to all these things. They start nailing these things to you from the moment they discover you have a penis. And the same thing for girls. It's like, oh, okay, so now your work is to nurture, give birth, be the wife, clean cook, you're the neck of the house, whatever it means, you're the helper of the man, all that. Then it gets into your subconscious because they start the information really early when your brain is not yet formed properly. All right. By the time you're 25, which is when scientists say your brain is fully formed, you have very hardened messages. Depending on your culture, depending on where you are born, how you are raised, all that stuff. The messages that were hardened to you before you are 25, that were repeated and repeated, including religion, and repeated, you actually imagine that's who you are because your subconscious mind says, this is how we are. You embody the messagings, all right? So if you never, ever get an opportunity to start questioning all these hardened messages that were given unto you since childhood, if you never get an opportunity to question them, then you continue being this person and imagine that, this is who I've always been, this is who I am, there's no need to be somebody else. But then when you encounter situations, people, environments that challenge this thing that you've been given as truth all your life, you feel it in your body. So that's why people bully others for wanting or being different. That's why we even fight them. Some of them threat them with death. And we say, oh, no, but you know, a man is not supposed to be like this. Or a woman is supposed to be like this. Oh, who are queer people even? You know, because the messaging. This is the messaging. It really, really depends on the kind of environment you grew up as a child, but also schooling sometimes, and the cultures you interact with as a child.
Is it possible then for someone, like if having grown up until that point where I'm like 25 or 26 or whatever, or 30, to now actually like properly embody a whole different viewpoint of masculinity, femininity,
there
whatnot?
is something in neuroscience called neuroplasticity. So our brains are actually plastic, and by plastic means it can expand. Okay, expansion means it can change. You can change your brain quite literally. Why? For example, if we imagine a large field of grass and we say we want to make a path on this large field of grass, we say, okay, so from now henceforth, for us to create a path, we have to pass through this particular place over and over and over. It's a matter of repetition. The reason you are who you are is because some things were repeated over and over to make you believe this is your personality. This is how you're supposed to behave, for example. So now Reversing it means it's kind of like a reprogramming, all right? It means you need to create new paths. So it's gonna take energy, it's gonna take time, tears sometimes, anger. Some people even go into depression if you really want to like overhaul everything that's going on in your brain. And I feel most often it's because we have a very or little to no understanding of how the brain functions. So that's why we don't know that we can change. We don't think we can change. It's because we don't know how the brain functions. But the brain can change even at 50.
The thought of like how long it'll take for it to change, it just seems like such a tiring process. Necessary, but tiring.
But I actually think the reason why is like because we've changed views about women, that the ones that benefit us.
Oh yeah, which benefit us for
There you
sure.
go.
Yeah.
So it's because it may be
Yeah.
a benefits us to keep men with this definition of masculinity because, you know, provider, protector, done, all of those are really geared towards how a man is showing up for me. So it's just like if we really want to change something, me and you, literally what we do
is our
is
profession.
a change.
Yeah.
It's changing the
true.
narrative. So it's like it's the ones that are not like directly benefiting us, which we always tell men that they're doing when it comes to the patriarchy, that they're not doing enough because it benefits them. Here we are, sat, chilling, doing the same thing. Maybe you can tell us from a perspective of masculinity what home you grew up in and what brought the change as far as deciding that you're going to decide what you're going to redefine for yourself what masculinity means.
Good question. So I'm the firstborn in my home. I have two other really amazing siblings, a guy and our only girl called Liz. Love her to death.
Hi, Liz.
My parents are also firstborns from their homes.
It's giving trauma. It's giving
So you can start.
You want to take a nap right now? Take a nap right now.
So you can imagine.
Yeah.
And in their homes, they all had around 7 other siblings. Okay. But from my dad's side, it was a polygamous home. So, and my grandma was the last wife, the third wife. Okay. So there's a second wife and a first wife. The first wife and the third wife, who's my grandma, happen to be sisters. All right. I like the look on your faces. So
But you know, because that happens in Luya culture too, it doesn't feel that
even
way.
in
It's
Luo
just like,
culture,
yeah,
it's
that
really
happens.
Western Kenya, like that, like
It's
Kwanza
normal.
Kitambo. That
Yeah.
was like just
I've
a
died.
thing.
I've
Yeah,
died.
you are now dead.
Yeah, so those things were there. My paternal grandfather fought in the Second World War for the British in Burma, and when he came back home, he definitely had a lot of PTSD, which was never picked up by
Of course.
anybody, right? He had like 30 kids, okay? And that was a lot, right? That village was like a city. Like, I have so many cousins, some of whose names I don't even know. We are so many, yeah? So grandpa was also dependent on alcohol a lot, and he was really violent towards his wives and his kids. At the point of his retirement, he also couldn't take all his kids to school. So my dad grew up in a very confusing environment. There was violence a lot, and also looking down up on women a lot. In fact, my mom tells me a story where grandpa used to do this thing. He'd call, so in Luo culture, if you're a polygamous man, you can decide if you want all your wives to be in the same compound. You build your own house in the middle of the boma. All right, so your wives each have their houses, and then you have yours in the middle, right? So my grandpa would call his male kids to his house, okay, and flatter them with like meat soup and all these nice things. But then the girls could never have that. Theirs is just, stay with your mothers, eat all those greens, which in our cultures is taken as poor people's food. And many other mannerisms that taught those boys that, you know what, women aren't that much, To add on to that, I was also told that my grandma, who's the third wife, was married off at 16 years old. Like 15 actually, because she gave birth to my dad when she was 16. Exactly. So I grew up seeing the way these people treated their mother. In fact, they would call her by her name, which many African cultures, that wasn't a thing. But then it was very strange to me, like, oh, you call your mother by her name, like, you know. And it's also, again, because she was so young. Well, they were all children, you know. But now coming now to our home, like where my dad and mom was, there was a lot of fighting from very early on, as far back as I remember, as when I was 6 years old. I'm now 35, and there is still chaos going on. You can imagine how that looks like. But I witnessed too much blood at home, physical fights, emotional blackmail, financial blackmail, like major abandonment towards me, but also my parents abandoning each other emotionally. So all this chaos was very detrimental to my mental health, and I didn't know about it until when I was maybe 25, because I didn't know what was going on with me. I didn't understand what depression was and all these things. But then it was also seeing how my uncles from my dad's side were also very violent towards their wives and their kids, you see. And I didn't feel good seeing my mom being beaten. I didn't feel good being beaten the way I was beaten. I was beaten, I was burnt, I was thrown to the walls, my head was stomped like I was some snake being killed. All manner of crazy, triggering things that no child ought to go through. But now, as I'm growing up, I'm seeing that not only is this violence happening in our home, it's also happening in our neighbors' homes, where fathers are beating up their wives, you know. And then I'm seeing, not sick to koplotie, even in the community, the neighborhood, it's a theme. And it's also on the TV in these soap operas and movies, and I'm seeing things, you know, and I'm asking myself, why is it normal to beat people up like that? Because I didn't feel good being beaten. I didn't understand why somebody would feel good beating other people, right? And I actually started asking these questions from such a young age. I just didn't have the language. By the time I was 15, I started rebelling. I ran away from home, became a street boy at some point. Went through some mob justice because I was shoplifting from supermarkets to survive, and carrying luggages for people in town for like 30 bob. And, you know, I'd survive shit and still go back home somehow, and, you know, there was still violence going on. So I became suicidal, tried to run away from home. The last time I went, I found myself in Malindi. It's long ass stories. At the end of the day, as I'm growing up, I'm starting to see the violence wasn't just the male on women's violence, wasn't just in my home, wasn't just in my community, wasn't just in my environment. It was a global issue, you know. And as I'm interacting with, I'm growing up in the church, and I can't see the church doing anything about this thing, and I don't know who to go to. The priests are not helping, the pastors aren't either. And I'm continuing to ask myself, do I want to be like what my dad has been? Violent, manipulative, chaotic, all that stuff. Do I want to be like that? Because it didn't feel good to me, you know? And because I started challenging systems, I remember going to protests for as young as when I was 17, just before post-election violence happened here. I started connecting how oppression works. So I could see how, for example, I don't know how old you guys are, but there was a time the government raided KTN offices back in the day, 2006, thereabout. And journalists were fighting for media freedom. And throughout my life, I was also stifled at home. I couldn't speak. My dad didn't want us to speak. So then during that time, I started connecting the oppression I was going through in our home with the oppression that I was seeing from government, and seeing how these things are interconnected. And then I asked myself, how does freedom look like for me? And that took so many years even to define, to find a language for. But alongside that, I started seeing how this oppression is also connected to how these definitions of masculinity and femininity are. They are all connected. They are connected. And they're connected to the economy as well. Because as a man, if your duty since boyhood, you're told in future you're supposed to be working labor to protect and provide for your family. What if my interests are different as a guy? What if actually I could be a better nurturer than the wife that I marry?
You're shaking tables.
What if?
You're shaking
I was
tables.
with you. Now I'm not with you.
What if? Because really, like inside you, Joanne, is a spirit that is living. It doesn't have any gender. Your breath of life does not have any gender.
It's my body that has
Yeah.
gender.
And that gender comes with politics. And that politics is what tells you what you're supposed to be and what you ought not to be. It's all politics. There's an astronaut that went into space. And when he looked back at the Earth, from up there, the Earth all of a sudden becomes so small. And he said he wanted to grab a politician by his neck and ask him, that little piece of land there, that's what you want to own? That's what you kill people about, And to give you further perspective, all this noise and politics we harass each other around about on this earth, when you get out of this earth physically, you go out there, it's very silent. Space is so quiet, all these planets, all these other suns, and you go, and then you finish the solar system, and then you go to the Milky Way galaxy, all right? The galaxy we live in, you can't even see the Earth from it. When you look at the Milky Way galaxy, you can't see the Earth. And we have thousands and thousands of galaxies. At the end of the day, you realize how small we really are. These things that are so big to us right now, you have to be this and be that and be that, they're nothing, really. We are like just a breath away from nothingness, really. So they don't matter at all. Be who you want to be, because you're here in this realm to really enjoy your life.
Yeah.
All these things are just distractions, man. Oh, a dad is supposed to be this way, a mom is supposed to be this way. They're just distractions.
Ask the question you asked. Go.
What was my question?
Your question about preference.
Yeah.
Because this is one of the dances and that journey you took. I think I've heard you. I think we spoke about this, I guess, on the live.
Yes.
So I see how it came to that. What I find interesting, number one, is that when you suffered all of that abuse and violence, it wasn't just about dad was a bad person or dad had trauma, that's why he did this. You started thinking about masculinity and things like that. That bigger picture is what's most of the time surprising to me. But when we are here sharing, like, what is a man and what kind of man I want and all of this, we just think we're just saying our preferences. So shoot.
Well, now after what she has already said, I've already learned that what I define as my preference is what actually has been internalized and taught to me.
Yeah.
I literally am squirming at the thought of my man saying that he wants to be a nurturer.
Yeah.
Like, it just feels so unnatural. But now you see, the unnatural is based off of like what we have been taught and what we have grown up knowing and whatnot. And I feel like to some extent, when I think about my son is 13, and when I think about him, like, I would love for him to have the options to be whoever he wants to be. But I realize now when I say that, I mean whoever he wants to be within the confines of what I believe masculinity should look like.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. I told you about the argument we had with my husband. My son wanted to wear these chains. Like it's almost like similar to this one. And my husband was just like, no, men don't wear that. Like you shouldn't wear that. And it was like a whole thing because my son couldn't understand like why can't he wear these chains. My husband was like, no, the men just don't wear jewelry like that. Like they wear like this small thing. And at that time it didn't feel this deep. Although now it feels really deep. Like really, what is the problem? What part of him does it hit when when he sees his son wearing
I think Zach talked about this when I was there. Let me tell you, I have a very clear line of discrimination. It's not one that I like. I am obviously owning this. But when I think about men as a whole, majority of the times I'm thinking about my romantic partners.
Yes.
That's the majority of my relations with men, because I didn't grow up around my dad. So it's like from about 11, it's like everything else has been, dynamics have been like friends, or mostly the people who have been most impactful have been romantic partners. So when I think about it like that, I don't know who I become in that context. Right? However, when we talk about my little cousin Israel, who's 4, or when we talk about my friends who I care so deeply about, I now start definitely seeing a real life, like on the ground root of like some of these views, or what could happen, you know, because I have cousins who I'm so close to. If they felt like they couldn't define masculinity beyond maybe providing and whatever, and they couldn't provide, like thinking that they could take their life from that perspective makes me so scared about the views that we do perpetuate. But I constantly have to bring it down. Like I constantly have to bring it back all the way down so that I can see the reality, because it's close to me. But you know, when you say men or women,
it's just
it's just there. It's just like
Broken
random
barely,
people.
yeah.
But when you point them out in your life, you're like, wait, these are the men who I want to feel like, you know?
And you see, the thing is, bringing ourselves to that center forces us to be present. When we over-glorify romantic relationships, which is what we've all been taught to do, it actually takes us away from rational thinking for most parts.
Okay.
Yeah. Because
That's validating.
because when you, for example, anytime we're talking about these men-women conversations, even a guy is thinking about a romantic partner,
Right?
right? They're not thinking about their mom, who is also a woman,
It's true.
And their daughter.
and their daughter. They're thinking about a romantic partner. Why?
Yeah,
So we've been
why?
conditioned to center romantic love, and it becomes an addiction. Because that's what you do all the time. It becomes an addiction. You start identifying yourself with this thing. But when you take a step back out of it and then you look at the whole sphere of humanity, you realize you actually know really little. And you experience very little just because our idea of love has been centered on romance. Romance is such a small facet of life. Such a small facet of life. There is so much more that we don't get to experience because we overglorify this one thing that is at the center of everything. And why is it hard to get out of it? Everywhere you go, romantic love is the love that is sold to you as a human being. You know,
TMI is always
if it
talking
is
about
not
romantic
connected to the deities and God and everything, any other kind of love, most times it's just romantic love. Even when I just mentioned the word love, the first thing that comes to your mind is not agape.
It's my man.
It's your man, your man, your man. That's just it. Exactly. So because you spend so much time there, the resources of your body get spent on it. You don't have tools in your system to help you see anything beyond it. So that's why right now we are having a hard time as parents to look at our boy kids or even girls. Okay, maybe for girls sometimes with what's going on right now, there's been a bit of support. Okay, you can do what you want and everything, but we are still a little harder on the boys. Like, this is the direction you're supposed to go as a man. You know, I'm your father, I'm your mother. There are women also who, even stories have been there, who tell boy kids, you're not supposed to be in the kitchen. Boys are not supposed to enter the kitchen.
Yeah.
So that's among the ways women and our mothers also take part in perpetuating patriarchy as well. So the more we spend more time in this little corner of the earth and we think this is all there is, the more we die very little people. Very little. Look at that.
So, Lydia, you got notes? You got some notes?
I'm alright. Actually, do you know what? Go on.
I kind of feel like, and I don't know if this is just a lie I'm telling myself or if it's like how I actually feel, but a part of me, even though when I look at my son, I'm like, I want you to be able to express yourself however you want, and for you to just like not be tied down by these definitions of masculinity. A part of me also feels really scared or nervous that the kind of masculinity he'll choose will be one that allows him to be targeted by people, to not be able to build relationships with people in the family who are toxic in some ways, kind of things. Like, I imagine you on your page, there must be people who come on there and it's just like you're a target for them because they're like, what is this guy doing? Who acts like this? Like, whatever. And the thought of my son being targeted because of wanting to like express himself and be like this different kind of man, that scares me.
So how I'll help you with that is this is a challenge to love him more. Because wherever that boy will go, he know I'm loved at home. I'm loved at home. It doesn't matter what the world tells me. It doesn't matter how people abuse me. If I know I'm loved at home, I'm enough. And when you teach your kids that they are enough, and you repeat that, no matter what they become, they will always be living in their center. They'll always be grounded. So you don't have to worry about the rest of that stuff. Of course, it might affect him. But you see, this is part of the change we are doing right now. We are saying, okay, they'll tell you and tell you and tell you, but do you know who you are? Do you know who you are?
But are you comfortable? Forget the world. Are you comfortable with him defining masculinity in a way that doesn't fit your own definition?
No.
That's the truth then.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's not about other people.
But you see, I feel like the discomfort, it's like something which I'm just having to learn to breathe through. Like, it's just like you just have to. And I feel like when you become a parent, that's when you really, some of the things that even he says and I feel uncomfortable, I'm just like, wait, why did I just suddenly
Like
feel
what?
so
If it's not too personal.
of something that he would say?
Yeah, that will make you feel uncomfortable.
I don't know. I feel like if I say that's like
It's personal.
yeah,
Okay,
personal
fair
kind
enough.
of like thing. But like there's many ways. I think I've shared this before. There are many ways in which like my son, he's not like super boisterous and like aggressive the way other boys are. And I've seen him be in circles where people are like, no, as a boy, just like jump off that thing. But he's very careful. He never wants to get hurt. He never wants to be unclean or like even like mud on his pants or whatever. And I see how sometimes I'm just like, but that's not even a big deal because in my head it's like boys shouldn't care about those things. But when my daughters do it and it's like, oh, they want to change because they got some mud on their pants, I'm like, yeah, of course, because girls are clean and girls should, they should change. They should just be, yeah.
And Hassan is also a joy to be around.
Oh yeah, he's also phenomenal.
So wonderful. And I think that's part of him being in his own body.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah, even that energy that you're necessarily supposed to be with boys, he doesn't have, and I think that makes him so wonderful to be around.
Which is lovely.
Yeah.
Which is why when I see these things of just like boys will be boys, I'm like, I don't know if my boy is like those boys you're talking about because mine is just fantastic and
he's
just lovely.
a great brother to girls. So
Yeah.
usually very aggressive boys aren't so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Oh my
But
God.
let me tell you, I feel like all views are views until you're a parent. All
Oh,
views
girl,
are views
girl.
until it's your child we are discussing, and all of the stuff that comes with parenting, the way you see yourself and the way other people see you through your child. The dynamics are crazy. So let me tell you the bit where I think I'm the drama. You can tell me.
You are. I've already told you. Continue.
So this is what I find, and I don't know if this is something I'm masking behind, right? I know for sure I want to be with a progressive man. I want to be with a feminist. I want to be with a man who sees women, like generally sees women. I want to be with a man who sees himself. I want to be with a man who is comfortable to share openly and emotionally. All of that I do, and I know I find that attractive. However, now that progression comes to the place of like maybe he goes Dutch, or he doesn't believe that he doesn't believe that really it will be him who's providing, or he doesn't have a sense of responsibility over me, like that sense of individuality, which I say that I am so attracted to and that I love. Once it's in contact with me now from a perspective of romantic partner, I find myself in a lot of discomfort because there's still something there that's lingering, that's saying really what I'm expecting of you is to be this man who's like a provider and things like that. And it's something which I'm definitely working on challenging. But yeah, am I the drama?
Yeah.
It's a little complex than that. There's a guy called Osho who I like so much.
I watched his documentary.
Yeah. He
Please plug it here in the caption below so that you can all.
But that documentary was
Yeah.
more problematic. It's not really
Yeah,
about his
it-
work,
yeah, it
but his
wasn't
work
about
is
his work.
wonderful.
Yeah, the politics around his work, but
Yeah.
his work. So he says something so interesting that many of us in a relationship, we are 4 people. Okay, we are 4 people. 2 masks showing up, thinking they're related, they're connected. The people you pretend to be in the relationship, okay? And the real 2 of you who are very emotionally detached from each other. So many relationships are like that, okay? Now, these masks, many times we wear them to protect ourselves, to continue with the narratives we've been taught since childhood, as self-preservation mechanisms, right? They're not really connected to how we want to enjoy being on this earth as human beings, okay? But the caveat comes in the sense that because of all the marketing, the politics, the gender wars and whatevers, in our subconscious, the way a good life looks to us in terms of a romantic partner, many times also very conditioned. And we are not aware of that. We are not aware of it. It's very conditioned, all right? So when I was a more practicing Christian, okay, when I also wanted a family, all right, my preference was I want a nice Christian girl who reads the Bible, dresses modestly, and whatever. That's the
Mukami.
template, right?
Yeah, and this is why the
see?
youth.
That's the template we were given also as Christian boys, all right? But once I got out of that space, even my preference changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, my preference changed because I wanted to experience more of life beyond what I was told to love. Okay. And I was like, okay, if I want to meet somebody, what do I want to do? Now I've grown to a point where, for example, I'm child free. I don't want to have kids. That's number one. I know I have to be with somebody who doesn't want children. I didn't have that preference at 25. It wasn't there. I didn't even think of it.
Because we're told we all have
You have
kids,
to be
we
a
all get
father. You
married
have
and
to
we
do
get
this
kids.
and provider, protector, blah, blah, blah. Right? Now, the other part is about personal responsibility. We are all responsible for ourselves, but we are also responsible for ourselves in relation to community. And this is where we are really suffering, really, you know. When we think of relationships, we think of isolation. We think of it's just the 2 of us. You have to have this, I have to have this, and then we are secluded in some corner and we are happy. You know,
Yeah.
even in these homes these days, like we barely talk to our neighbors, right? It's just somebody in their home, in their house, to the point where we've gotten to a world where you are very scared when your child plays in another house, even in your neighbor's house. You're scared because you just never know what goes on in there. Okay? So that's the reason I'm telling you it's a little more complex, because it's not just connected to what you think you want. There are many other layers that are informing what you think is good for you in regards to this partner being this way or that way. I say the element of friendship in our relationships is really underlooked. You know,
Therapist said
I
that.
1000%
My
agree
therapist
that
said that.
having been married.
really underlooked. Why is it underlooked? When I think of my female friends, for example, when we talk, there's no pressure. There's no pressure. When I'm broke, there's no pressure. I tell them, fam, this is where I am right now.
By the way, yeah.
There's no pressure. Like, yo, man, even internet for this month, I don't know. You know?
Yeah.
And there's no pressure. They don't look at me at Sasa you. Nothing. Right? Why does it change when romance is brought into the picture? We should ask ourselves that question. Why does that change? We start dehumanizing each other. Oh, a woman is supposed to be. If a woman isn't like this, then what am I doing there? and vice versa. That dehumanization is what makes us struggle a lot in relationships, because the moment I don't see you as a friend, then you actually become some kind of a worker to satisfy me. Yeah. It's service. You're working for me and I'm working for you. So we are laboring to love each other. There's no joy, there's no friendship. It's just all this stuff. We have different complementary energies, as human beings. That's why you're friends. You complement each other's energies. You enjoy each other. Okay? Yeah. So if we had that mentality when we think of romantic relationships, right? There'd be less pressure to perform these things that, you have to be this way, you have to be that way, Because, by the way, if you can't feel love when you are in your simplest form around another person, all of it is a performance.
So is it because when we are choosing our partners, we are choosing based off of what we have been told a husband should do or can do,
Yeah.
or the role he's playing? Now I'm just thinking at the me who was choosing a
Yes.
husband. It was just like, you need someone who can.
Yeah, because it's connected to your survival.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are taught to live in survival all our lives.
That survival thing is true, because when I think about a man's money, for sure, it's like, yeah, there's ways it makes it easier, because I've even seen how my mom's life has been, being so well provided for by my stepdad. Even though she's working, there's an ease it brings, but that ease I already have. I know that I have that ease, so it's not something which I'm looking to have. I have that ease. But when it becomes that provider thing is when I think about when I'm pregnant. So I can see, to me, it's like, if I'm pregnant, I need somebody who's definitely going to be able to handle the workload so that I can rest. It's about survival for me.
Yeah.
Cool. So
Yeah.
bringing that conversation at the center as well. Even where we are coming from, and even where we are supposed to even to be going. For example, we are dating or we are married, and you get pregnant. All right. I think it would be crazy for me to imagine that you're still at optimum.
Right.
Okay? You need a lot of support. All right? This support, there is support I can offer, and there is support I also need from my community to support you. We think it can only be the partner doing everything with the support. It needs to be beyond that. And that's one of the reasons why, for example, I see how important it is. Like, somebody can tick all those boxes, but then does he have a community? Who is friends like?
Yeah.
Or he's just a lone ranger somewhere who has all the money, and then you think, I'm going to be fine just because he can provide. It takes more than that, because that's how your kids will also be raised. There'll be a community, fam. You know what I mean? So what I'm actually just saying is, it's not bad to want these things. They're actually very natural human instinct things.
Right.
We all want to be safe.
Yeah.
We all want to be secure. We all want to be feel loved. We want to be taken care of. Men also want that, and that's why patriarchy is the way it is, because we want women to take care of us, right? You know what I mean? We want the same things at the end of the day. But could we approach each other from a friendship point of view and say, okay, these are your strengths, these are my strengths, you're good at this, I'm good at this. Can we decide to give our best shots so that we can support this space we are growing together? Let's leave out all those ideas we've been told by the world. Oh, I'm supposed to be this, you're supposed to be that. No, who are you? Who am I? You know what I mean? One of the challenges that I'm also constantly seeing as to why it's hard to achieve that is because of how dating has been. And I feel to a big extent heterosexual women suffer more, because a lot of us men are very wounded. We are not very truthful people. We are not transparent. And we thrive on performance. We really, because it is the world rewards us for performance. I mean, look at how we view sports for many of us, you know, or these high career roles. You see, like performance is, you know, productivity, all these things. We are rewarded for them, but we don't realize how far away they take us from our spirits and our hearts, you know. So in that regard, I also show up to date while performing.
Right.
You know, I'm
Because
just
you want
performing.
to be the best performer.
Yeah,
You want to be
to
the
be,
one
to be
chosen.
chosen
That
as the one who's
competitiveness.
competitiveness. It's a survival instinct also at the same time, because I want to win, I want to get the best, and I want blah blah blah. As animals, that's how we operate.
Yeah.
But we have the gift of the brain that the universe gave us. And in this brain, there's something called the frontal cortex, which is the part of the brain we use to think, to create, to develop ideas, to make hard decisions. Every other animal does not have that thing. And by virtue of us having higher brains, we really should strive for better.
Yeah.
We really. Even if it's just the way we are giving thanks to God for giving us this brain, we have to do better. We can't just be living on survival all along. No.
Yeah.
Surely.
Speaking of brains and using them, here are some of the
I know you're about to say
definitions.
some random ass shit on your.
Here are some of the definitions of what it means to be masculine. From
According
some,
to you,
as
guys.
you, and I'm glad I'm doing it now so that we can all feel embarrassed as a group. One is, first of all, money with an exclamation mark, a provider, and physical strength. Those three.
A
I think
huge money came up like probably like one in the top 2
and
or
physical
top 3.
strength and provider, but of course
Yeah.
provider isn't being defined about anything else except for money.
Yeah.
It's not provider
Emotional
of peace.
support.
No. It's not provider of
Not
peace.
peace?
No, it's provider of money.
Yes. A lot of people said that confidence in his masculinity. When he walks into a room, he's aware of his kingship. Which I guess is just like a way that people expect a man to carry himself. Like, enter like you own us all, you know.
Yeah. BDE.
BDE, exactly.
Him being his own person and not letting thoughtless people control his choices. Some of them were like that. Also respecting women from the same person. So she's a bit like she's moved away from like that bit, like, you know, exact definition as
Ability to do a hard task. Which Lydia was just like, don't women do hard tasks as well?
yeah.
How he handles everything, his personal character, deals with emotions, provision, care, all that. Everyone wants to say provision, but they're trying to, and no one is trying to sound like a gold
money.
digger, but they're
Yeah.
just trying to be like, but also all these things. But if you can have money,
Yes.
that one can also be very nice.
Very
If
nice.
you can also, yeah.
Another thing that came up so much, facial hair.
Oh, right, yeah.
Like
Beards
just
are
period
so-
beard.
Yeah. Being hairy, generally, I feel like when he does acts of service for me, so we want slaves.
Chivalry.
Actually, what we want is a slave.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Chivalry. His willingness and ability to treat a woman with tender love and care. So his masculinity is based on how he treats me. But when men say stuff like that, we are like, what do you mean?
I'm more
more
than just my body. I'm more than my ability to cook you stew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But men, yeah.
I feel like, in fact, you know, sometimes there's an episode we were just like, we need to talk about how we need to realize that men are also people.
Yeah. No, there's so many ways that
Because
we don't.
there are so many ways in which it's just like, yeah.
And it's like
They are
either
people
and
too.
especially when we talk about men as a group. And I guess sometimes I hear even in male podcasts when they talk about women as a group, there is a real disconnection and dehumanizing, as you are saying, when we make it like just like a us against them thing, for sure. But now when you come down and you're just like, it's Paul.
Yeah. It's
Paul
just,
is
it's
a
Ethan.
person.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's Rix.
Exactly.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Confidence and authority.
His scent, the sexy, sweaty one.
Sweaty scent. Thank you. Don't be too clean.
Really, we would love to tell you that there's more. than
Yeah,
this.
but really, that's mostly it. Solution provision, so you can solve issues.
Yeah.
That's really mostly.
So when me and Joe were talking about this, and we were talking about it in the context of her son, which she's already talked about, and what we were saying is that even though there might be things that are taught as responsibility, and it's like you, as you're saying, your conditioning is not allowing you, or you haven't challenged it enough to allow you to see beyond what we were taught a woman is responsible for and a man is responsible for. Especially if you've already internalized what a woman is responsible for, then definitely you're going to impose a man's responsibility on him. Now, what we're saying is that there's those which is like are gonna take time to get past it, but what we want to do, at least if we can do it in our lifetime, is allow men to feel like they have value
Beyond.
even if they're not able to be responsible in that way. How can we do that?
Yeah,
Or can we not have both?
I totally agree with you on that. And I feel that we constantly have to be interrogating ourselves in regards to what we understand for gender relations and what we understand for what relationships are. Yeah, we constantly have to be asking ourselves those questions, you know. Majority of us stick with what we've always been told, and it ends there. We don't want to expand, we don't want to question, it just ends there. And even in the middle of conflict, we don't want to think there could be another way of looking at things, right? I'll tell you a story. My mother didn't give an F that I was a boy. I had to learn how to wash the house. I had to learn how to cook. I had to learn how to do laundry. I had to learn how to take care of the house when she wasn't around. My brother likewise. My sister likewise. It was very confusing for me when I got outside and then I'm hearing men say, you know, I want a woman so that she can cook for me. I didn't get it. I was like, what do you mean? These are things you're supposed to be doing for yourself. What do you
human
mean?
skill.
Literally,
What do you mean?
You eating.
You know,
Yes,
you know, like it was very confusing for me. And I'm seeing with how I've grown today, it's gotten to a point where for me what's important is that somebody is aware of themselves, you know. Every other thing is really neither here nor there. Are you aware of yourself? Do you have life inside you that you want to build and create and something like that? Because I kid you not, if at the principle of this person's seed they have this life thing, you can create anything with them. And that's where trust comes in, which is another difficult thing that we are maneuvering, dancing with in these conversations, right? We can talk about how, you know, I can have my list about, she has to be this way, or if it's a woman, he has to be this way, that way, that way, that way, that way. And maybe even they already have these things. But if there's no trust, I can't even enjoy their presence, you know? Do you want to be around people who have everything the world told you they should have, but then you don't feel joy around them?
Yeah.
You don't want to experience that. You don't want to experience that. So if they have the life force inside them, you know, that is what you want to look for trust. If they have the life force within them and you say, man, this person looks like they can be my friend, I can talk to them and I can tell them what's really going on with me. You can create anything. That's how empires have been built. You can create anything, you see. But if I'm coming with that expectation that you already have to be in a particular place, and I'm not saying for things like, for example, personal hygiene, those are non-negotiables, you know, or at least this person has to be self-driven in a way that they are pushing for something for themselves, you know, wherever they are pushing for something for themselves, however small it is. I mean, stories have been told about how a man or a woman, they met when they had nothing, they were nothing, and they built a life for themselves. It's not necessarily that they had to be rich, but they were happy, they went through life, they managed finances, and they brought up really nice kids. So when you look back at your culture, the politics of your environment as well, because all these things we hear, we are being told in the news, new social media, I don't know what, all that politics, if you're a religious person, what your religion is also telling you about these things, all those layers are things you have to be looking at. Most of us don't at all.
Rix, are you in a relationship?
No.
Okay, just in case anyone is watching and you've seen and you just want to, you know,
And I also
you've
don't
left
want
his-
kids, so
Yeah, so if you also want
that
child
cuts like
free-
90% of
Yeah,
like
exactly.
100, almost 100.
almost.
But now you see, maybe we all need to look at inside and be like, why have we decided we want kids? Is it because we actually want kids, or is it because we have grown up knowing that people just have kids and that's what's expected? Ask yourselves. Are men or women more to blame for perpetuating the negative narratives, or like the just assumed narratives of heteromasculinity? Is it women who are playing the biggest part in perpetuating those narratives, or is it men, or is it both?
We are different. We are playing different roles in perpetuating these things. However, structurally, by structurally I mean in terms of laws, in terms of institutions, men, or the structure of masculinity has perpetuated more violence more than women. In fact, women have learned a bit more from patriarchy to be like how patriarchy thinks. So, for example, there was a time, if you're a woman, you couldn't open a bank account without your husband's consent. There are still places in this world where, especially in Arab countries, where a woman can't go anywhere unaccompanied. I remember, for example, in Afghanistan, when the Taliban were leading or ruling over the country, women are not allowed to go to school. They were not allowed to walk without covering their bodies, their faces, everything, you know. Even when you go back, boys were given more preference for education, right? Those are structural issues that patriarchy was perpetuating on everybody else, including the boys themselves. When it comes to the other side, it's, for example, like what we've said, our mother will tell, no, the boy, you're not supposed to be in the kitchen. You know, that's a woman's area. And it's also political in the sense that maybe that's the only place a woman feels free. You see, because that's where she's been left to be alone. And not being told you have to do this, you have to do that, you have to do that. She can create, she can be herself. You see where it comes from. So at the end of the day, when you go back to the center, we really, really all want to feel good. That's all it is about. At some point, I feel, in as much as we want to look for somebody to blame, alongside calling out these structures that are violent towards women and men, alongside calling out these structures, we need to start imagining a different world. Because in this conversation, we don't include queer people, for example, right? They are here with us. And I often say, humans are nature. We are nature, just as trees are nature. Joanne, when you go into a natural forest, there are trees of all sorts of species. Trees of all sorts of species. They just grew by themselves like that. They're diverse. Animals also are variant in their existence. And for some reason, we think human beings can only exist in a binary or extremes, man and woman. That's not natural. Nature exists in diversity. We are all diverse, right? So it only makes sense that there'll be somebody here and there'll be somebody here and people in between. It's just very natural. Their wants and needs will be different, all right? I know of a gay sex worker in Zimbabwe, Harare, who is also a father. Yeah. I know of an intersex Kenyan who is both a father and a mother. Like, because they have two genitals. They slept with a man and they became pregnant. They also slept with a woman and that woman gave birth to a child.
Wow.
We have, for example, more than 30 variants of intersex people in the middle there, in the middle, you know? So it goes this way towards feminine and this way towards masculine. All of us are in here because that's how nature is. It's just natural. You get? So when it comes to, oh, a man is supposed to be like this and a woman is supposed to... So these people in between here, what will they say? What will they say?
And then you always feel the pressure, like I guess if you're not exactly strictly
this
in
or
those-
that, yeah, you're
Yeah.
rejected, you're being told you're not human enough. In some cultures they're even killed.
Yeah.
You see, what is going on? So when you think of it again from the analogy of going into space that I started with, it all means nothing, really. All of it means nothing. If you get your person and you're friendly with each other and you're willing to work on your wounds and whatever, and you say, let's try to do this thing, go ahead in it. But as long as we won't be transparent, it won't work. As long as we won't try to grow, it won't work. Those are just the basics.
Yeah.
What do you think of the sprinkle movement? You've seen it.
I know about it. I say we are all responsible for our lives, but if you are okay with somebody being dishonest to somebody else just because you're benefiting from it, it means you're also okay with being dishonest with other people. It means you want to benefit from dishonesty. And yet in other areas of your life, you expect other people to be honest. So those are own goals. Me, I call them own goals, you know? And it's also tied back to survival, yeah? Where there is food, all of us want to flock, right? We want to eat from the tree that has fruits, all right? How we go about that is very different from one person to another. What I often say, as somebody who, for example, in my home, my mom was the person who was the abandoned wife. And my dad would go around with women all the way, start businesses for them, fuck them, do all these kind of things, give birth to kids outside there, and yet he's not showing up here. We don't have dad at home. He doesn't know our problems. I can't even go to my father and tell dad, man, sinangoda, I don't have underwear. I don't have a pencil. I can't tell him I want to go and play because I have to fear him. I have to whatever, But outside there, he's such a good guy. People love him. People adore him. He gets into a bar and he's like, everybody, bill on me. People adore him like that. But at home, so this sprinkle, you also have to ask yourself, who is the person suffering in this context? Do I want to take part in that? If you're conscious enough, but some people don't care. And also, I told myself, it's not my responsibility to tell them what to do with their lives, really. Do your thing, live your life. If you wake up one day and you're like, maybe what I'm doing is not good enough for me or it's not healthy, then you can change. Some people don't want to change at all. We also have to accept that.
That's true.
So all the suffering they go through and they don't want to change, we leave them there.
Yeah. Hey, let me tell you guys, we always say that TMI has been a platform where has challenged us so much. But then we had Chris Moretti here.
Oh, great.
So we had a fantastic conversation with them, and it was another one of those, you're being shaken to your core. This is one of those. This is one of those. And it challenges us to grow, to challenge what we think, why we think the way that we think. And I was already telling you, I'm going through a lot.
I know.
Rix, I don't know what you've done.
Was this the time?
To be tagged in the way that I have? I feel shaken so much, and I hope you guys are open enough to hear what Rix has been saying, to challenge some of the way that we think. And let's not just put it down to the Bible says, or my mom did, or my dad did. Let's go beyond that and see where some of these views come from, and how we are perpetuating a world that we actually don't want to be a part of. Like we said, when it comes to our sons and those close male figures who are in our life, we don't want them to suffer under some of the views that we perpetuate. So let's just sit down and just think about things.
I just need to breathe a bit. we just need to. Yeah.
What you're doing, and I think I told Joe, I will never unfollow you. I would just
could never,
come and just be shaken, be stirred, but just know that it's okay. I'm alive. Like the fact that even I allow myself to be that challenge is incredible. So thank you so much for living as being a living revolution, because you're definitely shaking the tables for women, for men, but in a way that allows us to be more ourselves, because that seems to be the center of what you're saying. Everyone having the freedom to be truly themselves from the spirit point of view.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My God. Yeah. Thank you so much. And guys, if you haven't followed him, please go follow him, Rix Poet, on Instagram. Any other platform?
Facebook, Onyango Otieno, and then Rix Poet, Twitter.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. If you want to see more but go there. Let's give a warning in advance that you will feel challenged.
But this was challenging.
If this was challenging, you will definitely feel challenged there. But what I have found works for me when I go to his page is like, even the anonymous questions, people are I'm like, this guy, what? Oh my God. Yeah, sometimes I need to pause and just ask myself, okay, I just suddenly felt my stomach drop, a tightness. What is that about? Where did I learn that? Or like, where did I internalize the fact that a man can't respond like this? Because like, where did I learn that? Yeah, just go to his page, guys. And thank you so much for watching this video. Let us know if you have any questions for him, by the way, please leave them in the comments or DM us on Instagram, TMI Podcast KE, Lydia KM, Murugi Munyi, and we'll be sure to get back to you. Until next time, bye.
Bye.